at 505-596-0048 if you would like to send it. You can send it by Facebook, but the screen's a little bit far away. If you send it to the business phone, then we'll get to see it.
Great.
So we were just talking about the putting the child at the center. And one way to look at that is, how do we minimize their transitions? And how do we give them quality time so they're not just ending up at one parent at the end of their long day work when they've barely been able to shop for dinner and, involved with the parents scurrying around. They might be better off that one extra night at the other parent's house if being at parent A's house might be. I was talking to a couple recently where one parent has a bunch of music gigs in the evenings, and this was their scenario. Was a lot of times the kids were just on a screen or with a babysitter because that parent was busy and didn't even remember to do the shopping. And I was suggesting, well, maybe it doesn't have to be 50-50. Maybe they can be more with that parent. And when they are with you, you don't have music gigs. You're actually out hiking, kicking a ball, and those kinds of things. So that makes sense to you too, and that's not a breach of 50-50. It's a different way of looking at equanimity. Okay. So then the other way to come back to the child-centric, right, for me has come up, and I want to hear what you think of this, as including the child. Now, obviously, children, once they're 15, 16, most people know that.
Right.
But what are ways, from your point of view, to include the child without making them the one in between? Who would you rather make with?
Right.
I'll give an example to hear more from you. You include the child in this change. One way I've said to people is, a young child, doesn't necessarily need to hear even the word divorce.
No.
They don't. Okay, I'm glad you agree with me, but I'll let you say more. They don't need to hear something that to the adults feels so severing. That child wasn't on the altar taking the vow. All the child needs now is that bonding, that assurance, right? So is there a way to include the child by helping them sort of co-create the story? Like, we are reorganizing, like we reorganize your toy shelf, like we reorganize. So tell me more about reorganizing family, and then including them in things like, do you want your room at my house set up exactly like it is at that house, or do you want a whole new set of? Do you want a blue wall now, or do you like the red wall?
That's a great example, because that's where I've helped parents actually start with the kids. Because the kids, even as young as 4 or 5 years old, will have ideas about what they would like at dad's house, at mom's house, and so letting them have input about
the input.
About which of your toys would you like to take back and forth? Which ones would you like to keep at mom's house? Which ones at dad's house? Would you like a different kind of bed? You want to keep the same kind of bed? Colors, wall decoration. And the question I've asked children when I've worked with families about this, so it's like, what do you think would make both your mom's house and your dad's house a happier house for when you're with dad or with your mom? And so the children will come up with some great ideas about, well, I think if we played more games, or if we were outside more often.
The stuff you could read in a psychology textbook comes out of the 4-year-old.
Yes, exactly. They can be brilliant. And so I always like to find out, how will you be helpful at mom's house? How are you going to be helpful at dad's house? When the kids have a sense of some agency, influence, even control, then they calm down, they relax, they're not as anxious. And when I see kids helping, I had one mom, a divorced mom, with her son. The son was 5 years old. And mom was so frustrated because he always wanted to help wash dishes after supper, and he made such a mess.
Send him to my house.
I said, exactly. And I said, what? Your son wants to help in the kitchen? You've got a great opportunity here. You can teach him how to do dishes better. You can teach him some things about cooking. If your child wants to help, don't discourage that initiative, because kids want to have a part. They want to
participation.
Yeah.
Participation. So what about this notion then, coming back to the narrative? The idea that for us as adults, it's heartbreaking. It's heart-wrenching. It's indescribable pain for many of us going through separations that we had plans for. The child, it's a whole different perspective. So what can we say to them? How can we work with them to co-create a narrative that feels secure? Some of what I've said to parents is, well, some parents decide to take off the Peace Corps, and they're going to be on the other side of the world in a different culture, and the child is going to need to adjust, and there are ways of doing that. So what if this is in the category of reorganizing or big adjustments, major change? So what would you tell parents about
number one,
framing?
Kids are resilient, and so if they have some direction, they can experience some satisfaction in the transition. They're going to be able to do that. Kids will embrace new, exciting, unusual things far more than we adults are willing to do. How many times have our kids, gone out and tried to eat a bug? They're going to try something new.
Well, then let's go down that alley for a minute, even if you were going somewhere else. New, exciting, unusual things kids will embrace. Some kids a little more adventurous than others, but it's basically there, right? So is it okay? I say yes. But do you think, is it okay for parents to make this with a spin of new, exciting, and adventurous, and then manage the sadness or the confusion as it comes, but not necessarily initiate with, I know this will be hard.
It may be a high expectation for the parents to frame the dad's house, mom house as new and exciting and adventurous. And so that may be a little strong to bring into the framework.